All right, everybody, this is Schmitz, and I'm going to be going over the NHL slate for tonight, and it's a really, really big slate. And the reason for that is because the NBA only has a two-game slate. It's a really, really dead day for DFS in general. Again, there's no more Thursday night football. There's not even any LOL, I think, until much, much later tonight. And with the NBA having only a two-game slate and the NHL having a full, 8, 9, 10 games, you're going to get some big contests and some big participation from a lot of beginner NHL players. So I figured I would go ahead and break down the slate. And I usually just do a really, really quick one, but let me see if I can, do a game by game breakdown and see if we can't come up with some good approaches and some good ideas for tonight's slate. Now, again, if you wanted to, I don't want to say cheat, but if you wanted to, just build some lineups, you could, if you were a premium member on TrueDFS, you could get access to my my projections, and you could just upload those to the optimizers and kind of build that way. But also, if you wanted to do kind of single entry stuff, you could look at my sheets and just kind of visualize it the way I've gone over in previous videos on that subject. But I am going to try to go first game by game and make this kind of a traditional breakdown, and then go back to the sheets after and see if they kind of bear out, what I think I'm going to end up doing. So let's just get started with Anaheim and Montreal. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to first analyze whether there's anything really good to stack. In other words, if it's a team that I want to target as a full stack. And I also want to identify maybe if there's kind of good one-offs. And the first thing I'll notice is on the Anaheim side, it's a very, very marginal kind of stacking situation, if at all. But what I do see is there is kind of a decent one-off here at the wing position. That would be Jakob Silverberg. So depending on how you end up building, you could end up using this as kind of a decent one-off here. So I do like Silverberg here. And initial ownerships have him only about 5-6%. So that's actually not bad. So he's really the guy that I would really want to target from Anaheim. The goalie Stolars, who I have going right now, he does not rate to be one of the better goalies, I don't think. So I'm probably not going to get to him either. The other side of the game, Montreal. Let me just take a look at that for a minute. Yeah, Montreal again, a very, very, very fishy stack situation. If anything, really, really borderline. The lines that include Toffoli, Suzuki, Mike Hoffman, and wing. That's not the worst idea in the world. They are low owned, but I just don't think they're going to approach anything resembling a priority here. So. I don't really like Montreal either. So anything just from this game, I just kind of like Silverberg as kind of a one-off. All right, let's move on to Carolina, Ottawa. And I actually do have some interest in this as mostly kind of a secondary. Well, I shouldn't say secondary. I mean, you can certainly stack this. And I do think that Carolina looks pretty good. And let me just highlight the guys that I like from Carolina here. That would be like Svechnikov and Trocheck. And Tervini. And again, you want to find, if you want to play more guys, you want to make sure that they correlate. You want to play guys in the power play line and things like that. But these are the three guys that I would start with on the Carolina side. And I do think Carolina is a pretty decent option. Although when I'm looking at as far as ownership goes, they do have double-digit ownership. So I'm not the only one that's seeing this. So let's see if maybe there's a lower owned option we can get that's even better than Carolina. We're going to get to a kind of a nut matchup a little bit later on. So we are kind of looking for those secondary stacks. So Carolina, they could be one, but again, at double-digit ownership, it's definitely something you have to, think about. Goalies from both sides, from Carolina, I don't really have a lot of interest in. Take a look at the Ottawa side. Mm, Not really. I used to play Ottawa quite a bit, but today's slate, they really don't rate to be that great. Um, Tyler Ennis is kind of an okay one-off, but not that big of a deal. Let me just take a look at the goalies again. Just make sure I'm not missing any of this. No, I'm really not getting to either of the goalies in this game. So for me, play the Carolina guys if you want, and I really wouldn't run anything with Ottawa. All right. New Jersey at Tampa. Not really. I mean, this is like really, really low level. I mean, they're going to be, New Jersey's going to be very, very low owned. I guess that helps, but they're just not projecting even close. So I don't really think I'm going to get to too much of New Jersey here, if at all. On the other hand, you have Tampa, who is rated to be one of the best stacks on the slate. So let me just highlight who the top targets are. Let's get rid of the Carolina guys for now, and I'll just kind of list the Tampa guys that rate to be really good. That would start with, let's just list them all. So Killorn and Stamkos. Palat. And then Point. Those are the main guys. Points. So those are the main four, but you could use these other guys too. So Hedman at defense, he's obviously makes the whole power play go. Corey Perry is not bad, but not really. It's really just these four is like the main ones. And I wonder if Tampa's goalie actually looks pretty good, because you can correlate. There is something to be said for correlating goalies. So let me just see if, yeah, he's okay. I have him rated as about my fifth best goalie. So if you can get some correlation out of it, you can certainly play Vasilevsky. So this is another, this is a very, very chalky stack, which, it's for good reason. I mean, it rates really, really strong. Is it as good as Edmonton later? Well, we'll have to think about that. But Tampa is certainly a premier option. So far, you have Tampa as the premier option. And then, if anything, maybe a little Carolina next. Okay, let's now take a look at next game, which is Golden Knights at Florida. Let's take a look at, I guess, Vegas first. Yeah, so Vegas. So as far as stacks go, it doesn't look that great, but you have two. Well, one in particular, we'll get back to it, but you have a couple of really, really strong one-offs here. So first one is going to be Dadonov at 3,500. So he's someone that you really want to get in if you can. And the other one is Mark Stone, also from this game. So as a stack, it doesn't look like to be the greatest stack, but these are certainly guys that you want to include in your one-off pool. So Dadonov and Stone from Vancouver, from the Vegas side. Let's take a look at Florida. Florida, not too much, I have to say, even though they're at home. So I'm probably going to pass on the Florida side of things. Let me take a look again at the goalies. No, not him either. Yep. So no, nothing there. So I would highlight those two one-offs, Dadonov and Stone from Vegas, and really neither team shows up as a really, really as a priority stat. All right, LA at the Islanders. Let's take a look at my home Islanders first, I guess. Yeah, so once again, it's kind of this isn't a one-off for a player. This is a one-off for a goalie. So Sorkin rates to be one of the really strong goaltenders out there. So I would make him as one of your goalies. Then you could filter in, and he's 7,500. And if you've been watching these videos, I do like to pay down for goalie if possible. So Sorokin certainly rates to be a good play. Other one-offs, really not that much. If anything, maybe Zach Parise, but but pretty marginal. Let's look at LA. All right, so LA, again, not the greatest stack in the world, but you do have a couple of good one-offs here. So let's go through them. You have Dustin Brown at only 2,700, which is obviously very useful. And you also have Adrian Kemp. Adrian Kemp, also at wing. So these guys could be good one-offs here. Again, they don't look to be great stacks, the Kings, but those guys could really make, again, let's say you really want to stack Florida, or, Tampa or Carolina or Edmonton. You might want some good one-offs here. And, Dustin Brown's really cheap, Kemp really, relatively cheap at 3,800. So I think both those look really good. And both of them look to be under 5% on them. So that's pretty important. Let's move on to Seattle at Pittsburgh. I guess we'll look at Pittsburgh first. Pittsburgh, just nothing, except for the goalie. So Tristan Jarry looks to be playable here. So you have Sorokin, you have Vasilevsky, and now you have Jarry as a playable goalie. I don't really like much of the skaters at all. I don't like the stacks, and I don't like the one-offs, at least on the Pittsburgh side. Let's take a look at Seattle. Nothing. I mean, I just don't have them rated as strong as some of these other plays that I've talked about. So look at GPPs. I mean, these guys are all going to be low owned, but that doesn't mean they're good plays just because they're low owned. So I think this whole game is kind of a pass here. Let's take a look again. I will say one guy on Pittsburgh, if you want, you could play Jake Wenzel. I think he's okay, but again, just kind of as a one-off. You want to pair him with Rust and Malkin. That's okay, but I just don't think that they're as good as some of the others. It's not like you're getting Pittsburgh at really low ownership. You still have to pay like 10% for that. And I just don't think they're as good as the Tampa or Edmonton. So I would probably pass on the Pittsburgh. But if you get to Gensel somehow at 7,900, it's fine. But I just, short of, getting them from a randomizer, I don't think I'm getting there. Rangers, Columbus. Let's take a look at the Rangers first. All right. Rangers, now we're getting somewhere. This is kind of a really, really good stack you can play. So let me clear the decks here and go over who these guys are. So we like, and they're all very close. So let's put them all in. Kreider, you have Panarin, you have Zibanejad. Oops, I wordle here. Zibanejad, and then two more. No, one more. Strome. So this is a very, very strong stack you could play. These four Rangers right here. And as far as ownership goes, yes, they're going to get owned. They're going to be owned very similarly to the other guys we mentioned, like Tampa, Carolina. But they do. It's because they rate to be really, really strong. So you have the Rangers. Now you have Tampa. You have some Carolina. All right, that's pretty good. Goalie for the Rangers? No, I don't believe so. Let's take a look at the other side. Let's look at Columbus, see if they're playable here. Nope, I don't really like anything from Columbus. Max Domi, he's still in the league. Oh, it's Ty Domi. So I got him to do Ty Domi. So yeah, I don't really like too much on on Columbus, nor the goalie. So for me, Rangers are a really, really good stack. And that's pretty much it. All right, Calgary at St. Louis. Let's take a look at, I guess, Calgary first. Calgary, not too appealing. Don't really like anything over there. Again, they're just not as good as some of these others. And I can get into all the breakdown of the stats, but you don't want to hear any of that. St. Louis. Okay, I got something for you, and that's the goalie. The goalie for St. Louis is, I think, one of the premier goalie plays on the slate. I don't know who this is, but he's rating really, really strong at 7,700. Ville Husso. Let me just compare him to some of the others. Yeah, I have him as the second best goalie overall on the slate. So, yeah. Let's move on. Vancouver. Just got 2 more games. Vancouver and Winnipeg. Let's take a look at, I don't know, Vancouver first. Nope, I don't have a single play for Vancouver. They all just project really, really poorly. And yes, they're low owned, but just not going to do it. On the other hand, Winnipeg, you have a couple of guys. So, well, you have a good one-off, and then the goalie looks pretty good. So Connor Hellebuck is one of the better goalies on the slate. He's not as good as Husso, but he's still very good. And the other one is a one-off, a defense one-off, and that would be Nate Schmitz. So at 3,900, again, if you don't want to do full stacks of these other teams and include kind of, one-offs from others, Nate Schmidt rates to be a pretty good one-off there. And he's getting some ownership at 8%, but not the end of the world. So I definitely like that. And then if you didn't like any of that, you get to the kind of the premier situation on the board, and that would be the Edmonton game. So let's take a look. Yeah, so Edmonton rates to be the top stack on the board by, I don't know, I want to say a lot. Remember, this is hockey, so it's not that easy, but it certainly rates to be the top stack. And let's just throw them in here. You got Nugent Hopkins, you have McDavid, you have, well, I'll throw this in. You get a really cheap defense. Well, not cheap. You get Bouchard, which makes things kind of work. You have Puljujarvi. Wait, you have Puljujarvi. And you also have Draisaitl. And the unfortunate reality is you can play all these guys. So if you want to stat like the entire Edmonton team, you can afford it with some of the other one-offs that we kind of talked about. Not to mention the fact that you get Nugent Hopkins at 4,100 and Puljujarvi at 4,200, and Bouchard at 5,100. So you can make all this stuff work. So you have Edmonton, you have the Rangers, you have Tampa, and you have, maybe some Carolina. You have a couple of really, really strong stacks you could get to. And these guys are going to be really high owned as well. And these guys are also going to be 15, 16%. Let's take a look at Nashville for a second. Let's see. Nashville is really close to being sneaky here. So the first thing I want to say, well, we'll get to it in a second, is that the Nashville goalie is a very, very strong play. And the reason why is, number one, all these Edmonton guys are really chalky, right? But also, even if these guys score, I mean, they're going to rate to put up just a boatload of shots on them. So that's what you want from goalies, is the ability to face a whole bunch of shots. So Saros is on your Tampa lineups, on your Carolina lineups, on your Rangers lineups. I think Saros is a really, really strong goalie play here. And there's also a couple of plays you can make here for Nashville. Can't quite get to them in a stack, but there's some really very decent one-offs here. One of them is Forsberg at 6,100. And another one is really, really cheap. And that would be Luke something, Luke Kunin. It's somewhere, I promise you. Just my keyboard is a little bit wonky. Kukin, is that it? Is that what I said? No, Kunin. And only 2,600. So it doesn't take a genius to figure out. I mean, you can play like all these Edmonton guys if you want. You can play all these Tampa guys if you want. You can play all these Carolina guys, these Rangers guys if you want, because there are some very, very strong one-offs to make this all work. Okay. So let me just kind of let me take a look at this from a sheet perspective and see if it kind of bears out everything that I was saying. Let's just take a look at this. I'm going to bring in my sheets here. And yeah, as you see, the Edmonton guys at the top, these one-offs that I kind of mentioned over here. It's kind of, from a visual, it's pretty inspiring to have the top three guys in the slate all on the same team. So it's a tough fade, honestly. But you know, it is hockey, and these other teams can come through. So whether you run my projections through optimizers, whether you do single entries, hopefully this breakdown is going to help you. I'm going to probably do a little of both. I'm going to let the optimizers get me to some stacks and some maybe low-owned things that didn't project all that great. But in my hand builds, I'm going to probably end up going with some combination of the guys we talked about, either Edmonton, Tampa, Carolina, and what was it, Vegas? That was the other one, and the Rangers. That's about it. Really, really big slate tonight. A lot of fun, and hopefully you guys do well.